Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for you. And honestly, the good and bad ones, we've been chomping at the bit to talk about these since Friday. Because the good martini keeps getting better. And the more you think about the bad one, the worse it gets. So let's dive right in. As you well know, if you're listeners to the Three Martini Lunch, not a lot of remorse when longtime and vicious, powerful terrorists get blown to smithereens. Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran recently, Fawad Shakur in Lebanon. He was connected to the Marine barracks bombings back in 1983, killing 241 Americans, and on it goes. But then in the last, week or two, right, Jim? I mean, the whole chain of command of Hezbollah has pretty much been obliterated. In fact, on Friday, just as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was denouncing the anti-Semitic bile that is the United Nations, plans were in place to bomb more critical targets inside Lebanon where Hezbollah leaders were hiding out. And so what we found out on Friday was, or at least I think maybe Saturday officially, is that Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary-General of Hezbollah since 1992, got blown up at the age of 64, which means he's led Hezbollah for half of his life. And he was also very much involved in the Beirut Marine barracks bombings. And so one by one, but very, very quickly, all these top Hezbollah figures getting blown up. And curiously, Jim, there's always seems to be an Iranian high-ranking general nearby these terrorists. Very, very curious. And then just to add even more fun, over the weekend, we didn't even necessarily have confirmation that Nasrallah was officially dead. Then we get breaking news. Israel has eliminated Hassan Khalil Yassin, who replaced Hassan Nasrallah hours ago. I mean, the guy didn't even have a chance to really get his desk organized or get the decorations on the walls. I mean, and then yesterday, as if that wasn't enough, we find out a helicopter has crashed in southwest Iran, killing Mohammed Abdul Salam, the Houthi coordinator in Iran, along with several others, including a senior IRGC commander, which seems to be standard with all these attacks now. So, Jim, I know that a lot of people are very upset about this, from Rashida Tlaib to Javad Zarif, the former foreign minister in Iran. So basically, all the right people are furious about this. But what do you make of what the Israelis accomplished, obviously with some good sourcing on the ground, as to where all these horrible people were?
So first of all, Greg, here in the United States, we are used to the Friday afternoon news drop being some unpleasant statistics or unpleasant news, kind of foreshadowing another martini we'll be talking about in a moment. In Israel, the Friday afternoon news drop is a 200-pound bomb. And it came out after our podcast. We would have loved to talk about this on Friday. Apparently, being the head of Hezbollah is the new equivalent of being the drummer in Spinal Tap. They just keep spontaneously combusting. Was it number 3 guy at Al-Qaeda we kept getting every couple of weeks or in the early days after 9/11, and just, boom, up, there goes another one. All right, Abdul, you're up. Next guy. When the guy, gets whacked after just a couple hours as the head of, what was your favorite minute of the Yassin era of leadership of there? I mean, even Bill Belichick was Jets coach for one full day. All right. I just want to point that out as comparison for how long I'm going to make that comparison. Look, we're overjoyed by this. It certainly looks like Hezbollah has taken, if not an utterly destroying blow, then one that has severely damaged its ability to function anytime soon. It's going to take a long time to rebuild from this. But we should point, and I've seen some people making the argument that you look at the damage done to Hamas, you look at the damage done to Iran, with all the places that are spontaneously exploding over in Iran, and now it's happened to Hezbollah. I've seen the argument that the October 7th attacks were the most wild miscalculation and the most backfiring attack since Pearl Harbor. It's a really interesting comparison. I would point out, though, that doesn't make the loss of life and the tragedy and the horror of October 7th really all that much easier to take. It still is. You can't say, oh, well, thank goodness this finally, got Israel to go after its enemies. It's great that they're going after their enemies. It's great that so many bad and evil people are no longer walking around and doing evil deeds. I've been thinking about, as we approach Election Day, we are now a week away from October 7th. And how is that day going? We know terrorists love anniversaries. We know that Israel will be mourning that day. We know a lot of people in America will be mourning that day. Is somebody going to try some attack on that day or something like that? I'm hoping not. And it certainly seems like there's a whole lot less people around to try to do that sort of thing. But still, this is good news with a kind of nagging anxiety of, if Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, all those folks, they're reeling, which is great. But cornered animals get desperate and can, get really ferocious in moments like that. So we will see what happens in the Middle East. But the world is a better place without the head of Hezbollah. And by the time listeners hear this, they may have lost another one at the way things are going.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, as long as the Iranian regime remains intact, there's going to be these sorts of people that they're propping up, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah. And so, you just gotta keep pushing them down. I'm assuming the new guy in Hezbollah was probably, as of a couple of weeks ago, the deputy undersecretary of cafeteria organization or something, because
he was actually not in acquisitions and logistics. I think they eliminated that whole department. The guy who ordered the beepers.
Meanwhile, in another strike in Lebanon, this is from the Times of Israel, I believe, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees confirms that Fatah Sharif, named by Hamas as its leader in Lebanon, was employed by UNRWA and was blown up last week. So if you had any misconceptions about what UNRWA was actually doing in the Middle East, I think this definitely helps with that. But
and
again,
I should say to listeners, oh, good, they're finally going after the teachers' unions. No, that's not why this is important. It's because they're connected to Hezbollah.
Yeah,
all my relatives who are in teachers' unions are going to give me grief about that. But that's okay. That's fine.
No, we want to politically defeat the
teachers' unions. You're better than Hezbollah. I'll give you that much, okay? So you never say I never say anything nice about you.
Randy Weingarten, that's the nicest thing we're going to say about you for a very long time. So
better than Hezbollah. You can put that on a bumper sticker.
All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And as you foreshadowed, it was a massive Friday news dump, but it also coincided at a very convenient time politically for the right, because just as Kamala Harris was making her photo op visit to the border, and we'll have a crazy clip from that in just a second as well, Congressman Tony Gonzalez, not the guy who played tight end for the Chiefs, he asked for information from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, back in the spring about the number of people currently in the country illegally, who came illegally, who are either convicted or facing criminal charges for serious crimes. Now, the data is dated from July. The letter back to Gonzalez is dated September 27th, which made it very convenient for Gonzalez to release this letter just as Harris goes to the border. But the information in this letter is insane about the number of people in this country, came here illegally, who have been convicted or are charged with serious, serious crimes. Here's Bill Malugin, first of all, of Fox News, explaining what this non-detainer statistic means.
ICE has something called a non-detained docket. Essentially what that is it means migrants who were encountered by DHS but are no longer in federal custody. So who's on this non-detained docket? It's illegal immigrants who were caught and released at the border, released with the court date years away. They're in immigration proceedings, combined with illegal immigrants who have already been ordered deported from the country by a judge but are still here roaming the country. So keep that in mind, this non-detained docket.
So now let's look at the numbers, specifically of those convicted of the most heinous crimes.
On ICE's non-detained docket, they're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault.
So, and then there's another 4,250 who are charged with sexual assault, another 1,845 who are charged with homicide. And I'll go over some of the other numbers of other crimes in just a moment. But then Malugin says, you know what? We're still not getting the full number.
The jaw dropper here too, guys, is all these numbers we just rattled off, they don't even account for the nearly 2 million gotaways who have crossed our border under the Biden administration. Those almost 2 million gotaways, they were never encountered by DHS. They snuck in. They were never caught by Border Patrol. They were never encountered by ICE. There's no record of them, so they have nothing to do with the numbers I just rattled off to you.
Again, we'll go over some of the other numbers in just a moment, but Jim, over 13,000 murderers, over 15, nearly 16,000 sexual assault of some variety, many of them rapists, most likely. What are you doing? What is your job? What is your one job at the border? And we're failing miserably. And it's when you think of all the policy reversals at the beginning of this administration, it's just maddening.
One of the defensive spins that was put out by an unidentified Department of Homeland Security spokesman was that, well, this isn't just the Biden administration. This goes back decades and decades. Great. What level of relief am I supposed to take for that? Oh, they've been in the country for a long time. They've probably been killing Americans for a long, long time. The other somewhat mitigating fact is that some of these people may have, and probably a good bunch of them have been arrested in the United States. And they may be either awaiting trial or they may be convicted. If you're convicted on a crime that is not an immigration crime, this information never gets to ICE. So apparently, if you're convicted in state court, if you're convicted in local court, nobody ever gives that information to ICE, which seems like the sort somebody should send an email or something. We're now 23 years after 9/11, and which was done by a bunch of guys coming over here legally on temporary visas with box cutters. You would think at this point it would be, it's really important for us to know who we've got in custody and who we don't have in custody. And yet apparently that information either can't be shared or isn't being shared between these. That's one of the things that's absolutely mind-boggling about this. All of these numbers are deeply troubling. All of these numbers are, there really isn't a way you can spin this. So I'll make two interesting contrasts. One is ICE Deputy Director Patrick Lechleitner. I hope I'm spelling his name correctly. First of all, ICE has been acting directors for the past decade. We have not had a confirmed ICE director since 2014, which I think is, the last was during the Obama years. So that's bad on Trump administration, bad on Biden administration. They've had 10 acting directors in 10 years. That doesn't strike me as a particularly good or stable way to enact these sorts of policies. Whatever else you think of the current acting director of ICE, he was willing to send this information to a Republican congressman right as the vice president was visiting the border and a couple of days before the vice presidential debate, right? There are a lot of people who would probably, the Biden administration and in the Kamala Harris campaign, who really would have preferred this information did not come out until after the election. So credit ICE for being willing to report the bad news. And when the DHS says, well, this data is being interpreted, hey, it's your guy who's putting out the information. Right? If you don't like the way that we're interpreting this data, put out clearer data. I really would love to have it broken down by year. It sounds like for some reason ICE either can't do it or won't do it and can only give you this giant bulk and say, well, some of them might be a decade ago. And so some of them, for example, their own countries won't take them back. They mentioned Russia as a hypothetical example. Well, that doesn't mean you put them out in America. If you're too much of a murderous maniac for Russia to take you back, that's a sign you should stay behind bars. We don't want, and they're like, oh, no, don't worry, they've got an ankle bracelet. Oh, great, he's low-jacked. That's not going to necessarily do me any good, but he's stabbing somebody to death, right? So just utter flabbergasting this. And I noticed the ICE puts, also the letter from the ICE acting director takes a shot at sanctuary cities. Now, it's not surprising that the acting director of ICE would not be fond of it. I do think this is I look at that as an indicator that this guy is trying to do his job and that he's frustrated with sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, and, oh, by the way, 11 states that have laws that bar state authorities from cooperating with immigration enforcement. So, ICE is not a perfect organization, and I'm sure that a lot of folks on the right have gripes about it, but I think these folks are trying to get it done. The DHS spokesman's statement was very much, don't blame Biden and Harris. So I'm paraphrasing, but it was very much, a lot of this was before this administration. Great. That's not an excuse. That doesn't make anybody feel any safer. So good to Congressman Gonzalez for getting this information out there. Good for ICE for admitting something that is not particularly flattering for the administration. Kudos to Bill Malugin, probably the hardest working reporter on the border and immigration beat, and just mind-boggling. I assume J.D. Vance is going to bring this up a lot tomorrow night at the vice presidential debate. If he doesn't, this is like malpractice, because this is about a stinging and indictment. Because this isn't talking about Dreamers. This isn't talking about DACA. This isn't talking about all those cute, adorable high school valedictorians. This is talking about people who are either convicted of crimes in this country or convicted of crimes back in their home country, which is probably one of the reasons they're trying to get into America. And you know what? Call me crazy. You're convicted of murder in your home country? I don't think you should be coming here. No,
you said a lot of things that are very much right. I mean, back just on Friday, we were talking about how ICE has frustrations with sanctuary counties right there in your own backyard of Fairfax County over and over and over again, making sure he's released before ICE can come get him, which is insane. It just makes the community more at risk. And then in terms of tracking them, I mean, if you watch 24, it never works. Whether it's the watch or the thing that you implant under the skin, the bad guys always figure it out.
They can get them off. It was when I started, I was doing research on this, and I actually started looking. What I could find a lot of coverage of was how dehumanizing the ankle bracelets are.
Oh gosh.
Now, I'm sure they're unpleasant. I'm sure it's embarrassing. I'm sure it's, people point it and, clutch their purses or clutch their kids and want to avoid you. But this person has been convicted of a crime. Like, it's not like you get them for jaywalking. So,
what's dehumanizing? Being murdered.
Yes, that's literally dehumanizing. Yes.
Yes. Try to get some priorities here. But in this list of crimes, obviously the murders and the sexual assaults are the worst, but there's also, between convictions and pending criminal charges, over 100,000 charged with assault. Dangerous drugs, 56,000 convictions plus, 13,000 more pending. Family offenses, I don't know if that's domestic violence or what that is, but that's over 10,000 total.
I wouldn't have minded a little more clarity in these terms from ICE, by the way.
Yeah.
But also, we should also point out 2 for monopoly for
yes.
for antitrust. And I was like,
yes.
Wow, I almost want to salute them for hard work, because most of these guys, we're killers, we're rapists, we're robbing people. When you can organize a monopoly as an illegal immigrant, you should be deported, but like a gold star for effort or something like that. It
depends what you're monopolizing. If you knock off the other 2 drug pushers on your corner.
Oh, okay, that's right. And what we want, look, as libertarians keep emphasizing, we need a free market of competing drug dealers on every corner to make sure that the customer gets the best prices and the best value for their illegal drugs.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, so fraudulent activities, that's kind of vague, but still there.
Bad checks, I assume.
20,000. Kidnapping, 2,500 plus, 851 pending. That seems to be significant.
By the way, I figure the kidnapping probably lines up with sex trafficking a lot.
Obstructing the judiciary, Congress, or the legislature, all told, about 12,000. Obstructing the police, over 10,000. Sex offenses, not including the ones we already talked about, that's about 12,000. So on and on and on we go. And the biggest one is traffic offenses. But some of that could be drunk driving and killing people while under the influence. So meanwhile, Kamala Harris was at the border on Friday, gaslighting big time, talking about how she's so concerned about protecting America's sovereignty. But just to prove that she doesn't get it, this is not 2 thoughts edited together. It's interrupted by applause a little bit, but these are 2 thoughts that she or whoever wrote this speech thought worked well together.
And as president, I will work with Congress to create, at long last, a pathway to citizenship for hardworking immigrants who have been here for years and deserve to have a system that works. As your president, I will protect our nation's sovereignty, secure our border, and work to fix our broken system of immigration.
You can't do both. You can't say you're going to protect the border and then say the people who broke the rules to come here get rewarded for it. You're only going to invite more people. It's the same thing Biden said 2020, saying I'm not going to deport anybody. It's the same principle.
A few years ago, Kamala Harris went to Central America and said, don't come. And no one listened. And when you run around and say, I'm going to create a pathway to citizenship, you create a greater incentive to get into the country because nobody wants to get missed out. At some point, they're going to cut it off. So you better get your butt across the border, across the Rio Grande, as quickly as you possibly can. By talking, this is one of those weird things where, look, you got a First Amendment right to say, yeah, we should have a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. But the fact of talking about it actually has a real world influence on the ground where more people try to cross the border because they want to get in on it.
Yeah, they knew she didn't mean it then, and they know she didn't mean it now. All right, Jim, let's end on a little bit of a lighter fare here, but back to the 2024 presidential race. And yes, the vice presidential debate is tomorrow, but one of the figures still involved in this campaign, even though he's technically sort of dropped out, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's endorsing Trump. He's excited to, be Trump's point man if Trump wins to, help end the obesity crisis and just make America healthy again, I think is what the tagline is there. And so to help Trump win and get that position, Kennedy is stumping for him around the country, and he's also waging a ton of different ballot fights because for months and months and months, he was pushing hard on legal fights to get on the ballot as an independent candidate. Now he's got kind of this catch-22, or let's say contradictory approach to his ballot access. So in swing states, he's trying to get off the ballot, like in North Carolina and Michigan and Wisconsin. And then in deep blue states, he's trying to stay on the ballot because he thinks that'll dent maybe the popular vote or whatever have you for Kamala Harris. So on the flip side, these states with liberal-leaning Supreme Courts are doing exactly the opposite. Or if they're not a liberal Supreme Court, they're kind of going along with what he wants to do. So in North Carolina, for example, he's off the ballot. In Michigan, after initially being said by the Secretary of State that he's got to stay on, an appellate court said no, he can take him off, and the Supreme Court says he stays on. Wisconsin Supreme Court now also saying he has to stay on. Meanwhile, New York says, no, you can't be on our ballot. So, Jim, it's like all of this. I mean, the courts are supposed to, of course, be non-partial, looking at the law, and it seems like whatever their seeming partisan bent is going right along with how they view Kennedy's ballot requests here. But of course, he's not being super consistent either.
So regarding that slogan, "Make America Healthy Again," Greg, I don't know about you, but I always think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when it comes to good health. I was just having a good bear cub roadkill burger myself yesterday, and they're very low in fat and all that kind of stuff. Look, I being on the ballot and not on the ballot is kind of like being a little bit pregnant. Either you are or you aren't. Either you're running for president or you're not running for president. And if you're not running for president and you endorse the other guy, you probably should come off the ballot everywhere. You know, and if you're still running for president, then stay in the race and say I'm running for president. But you'd think that, coming out and saying, I'm no longer running for president, I want you to vote for Donald Trump, that should be sufficient. And the idea that Democrats who absolutely wanted to get his butt off the ballot, no. Can't have that guy because he's helping Republicans. We got to keep him on the ballot. Hell no, we're not allowing you to be on it. The really fascinating one is when they're insisting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. must be on the ballot, but Jill Stein and Cornel West must stay off the ballot. Like that's, like nobody wants one consistent standard. Nobody wants one, either you're running for president or you're not, right? Cornel West and Jill Stein, who I probably will amount to like a percent between them, like they're running for president. If they have the signatures, if everything checks out, then yes, they should be on the ballot. There's no, who gets on the ballot should not be a contest of like which party does it help and which party doesn't help. It should be a simple matter of, did you follow the laws and procedures that are required? If you do, great. And you could be the, Purple People Eater Party. We don't care, right? That's what democracy is all about. Democracy dies in darkness, I had told, except when in broad daylight, people start shooting it because they don't, they want to make sure that their candidate can win. Utterly insane.
And you're so right about the effort to smother RFK Jr., but Cornel West and just, it's so inconsistent.
Really, I will be very surprised if the RFK Jr. vote, because he's withdrawn, amounts to much of anything. So it's not just that Democrats are wrong here, it's that they look ridiculous. But I guess those are the things you can do when the mainstream media will cover for you every time.
Jim, what a way to start the week. I don't know if the rest of the week can match what we had to talk about today, but we'll try. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. He is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Monday and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.